All right, let's go ahead and get this started. Call to order the regular city council meeting for July 9th in the city of Troutdale. If everybody would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's take roll call.
Okay. Counselor Ritma.
Here.
Counselor Caswell.
Here.
Counselor One.
Here.
Counselor White.
Here.
Counselor Wittrin.
Present.
Counselor Glantz.
Present.
Mayor Lauer.
Here. Thank you very much. And agenda updates. Mr. Ray Young.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, item number 4, the report from the Mountain Regulatory Commission by former Councilor Norm Thomas is off and will be rescheduled, for Mr. Thomas is ill tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Public comment on non-agenda and consent agenda items is welcome at this time. Public comment on agenda items will be taken at the time the item is considered. Public comment should be directed to the presiding officer and limited to matters of community interest or related to matters which may or could come before council. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes for each agenda item, unless a different amount of time is allowed by the presiding officer with consent of the council. The council and mayor should avoid immediate or protracted responses to citizen comments. Anybody on Zoom wishes to make public comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and city of residence for the record, please.
Mayor Lauer, Paul Wilcox.
Mr. Wilcox, good evening. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Paul Wilcox, Troutdale. Got something for you to ponder over your summer break or not, your choice. So here it is. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a budget committee member. I would request that council rescind Troutdale Municipal Code 2.08.245 Mayor and City Council stipend, which reads in part, quote, "The stipend is intended to be a reimbursement for expenses not otherwise reimbursed under section 2.08.240, unquote." The stipends were approved in 2005. A reading of council meeting minutes from the time indicates that the purpose was directly related to who was mayor at the time, Paul Tallifer. The rationale stated was that his duties as mayor limited the time he was able to dedicate toward earning personal income. One factor related to that might have been his specific means of earning a living. I would contend that more recently, activities that Mayor Tallifer may have felt were part of his mayoral duties or responsibilities are now in the hands of city staff, such as economic development and social media, which we would have called public relations in the past. My understanding is that there was a subsequent mayor who felt entitled to the stipend as income and expected expense reimbursement in addition. The $500 per month for mayor seemed intended to put a cap on what could be dispersed for either purpose. The problem with an unaccounted for stipend is that it is essentially a salary and the citizens had never been asked if they wanted paid counsel. No member of council should be expected to suffer unreimbursed out-of-pocket expenses. However, the stipend shouldn't be a source of supplemental income either, unless the voters have chosen to provide that. Example would be the child care expense reimbursement enacted by ordinance number 871. That's a legitimate expense that a council member should be reimbursed for. There should be a detailed list of what other expenses are eligible for reimbursement rather than simply a flat amount that can be spent at the council member's discretion. Though the stipends apply to both mayor and councilors, my main issue is with the relative level of the mayor's. I'd consider the $50 per month that councilors are eligible for as simply petty cash. The mayor's figure at 10 times that leaves room for income to exceed expenses from a purely reimbursable standpoint. I seriously doubt that any of the mayors since 2005 have had out-of-pocket expenses of $24,000 during their terms. In the interest of transparency, expenses should be documented or the salary model should be submitted to the voters. One might ask why this has become an issue after being in effect for nearly 20 years. I would attribute it to staffs having proposed increasing the amount of stipends in recent budget cycles, and council in turn considering implementing those increases. I don't expect anything to come of this, but I didn't want all my background research to be a waste of time, and public awareness is important. Also, this being a mayoral election year, voters should be cognizant of the stipend policy. Summary, council's compensation should either require expense documentation or voter approval of a paid council. I've provided separately copies of council meeting minutes related to the issue for historical context. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Anybody else on Zoom wishes to make comment? Go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and city of residence for the record. All right, not seeing anybody. Anybody in council chambers tonight wishes to make public comment? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. Let's move on to agenda item number 3, consent agenda 3.1 minutes, June 11th, 2024, City Council regular meeting. Let's just take roll. Sarah, please. and Thank you.
Move adoption. I move adoption.
Thank
Need a
you.
second.
Second?
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Counselor
No, I
Wynn?
jumped the gun. Thank you.
Counselor Wynn? Yeah, you're
Yes.
first. Mayor Lauer?
Yes.
Counselor White? Sorry. I have really good timing today.
Are you a dentist? Yes.
Counselor Wittrin?
Yes.
Counselor Glantz?
Yes.
Counselor Ripma?
Yes.
And Counselor Caswell?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I was very excited to get through this quickly.
You're going for the record.
So again,
Already tell.
we're gonna move past agenda item, and Ray helped me, and former counselor Norm Thomas helped. We're gonna move past agenda item number 4 and move directly into agenda item number 5, a presentation by UpRiver Village. Jane Foreman, the chair. Approach the table, yeah. And thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Jane Foreman, and I'm Chair of the Steering Council for UpRiver Village. Thank you for having me tonight, and please pardon my casual attire on this very hot day. UpRiver Village is a developing nonprofit that will support positive aging at home by providing socialization and extensive volunteer services to seniors in a 4-city service area. Our vision is that Gresham, Troutdale, Fairview, and Wood Village will be great places to age. Community services, family, neighbors, and volunteers will provide support that helps seniors stay engaged in their neighborhoods and communities and remain living comfortably in their homes for as long as they choose. So the word village is kind of overused in our area. There's village healthcare, there's the village retirement center. You see the word village all over the place. But the way we use that word village is not a place, but a support network. So a village is a group of like-minded people within a specific geographic area who come together to develop the resources that they'll need to age comfortably in their own homes. So villages embrace the philosophy of bringing services to people, to seniors, where they live, instead of moving those seniors into places where they can receive services, assisted living or adult foster homes. UpRiver Village will be a member of the Regional Villages Northwest, and that currently includes 13 existing and developing villages in Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington. We will also be a member of the National Village to Village Network, which includes right now over 500 existing and developing villages. So some of the kinds of services that UpRiver Village volunteers will provide are a lot of different social activities. Social, recreational, educational, culture, probably something going on every day in a calendar month. I mean, I could give you lots of examples: book clubs, movie clubs, walking groups, French clubs. I mean, it kind of goes on and on. It just takes one member saying, I want to start this kind of a group. Transportation is the most requested service in villages, but also occasional household chores, occasional yard and garden work, simple home maintenance and repair, assistance with technology. I've done a lot of that in another village. I'm a new addition to Gresham. Running errands, meal trains after surgery during recovery. And then there's vetted vendor referrals. So members have called in and endorsed certain vendors, and I could call and say, gee, I'm really looking for a trustworthy plumber that's reasonable, blah, 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 and probably get a name. So we often get the question, what will make UpRiver Village services different from the services that seniors are already getting in the community? And I think there's 3 unique features. Number one, UpRiver Village volunteers will provide an extensive array of services, including socialization. There's very few things that we won't do, that we can't provide. One of those is direct care, that like a home health agency or nursing agency would provide, any direct care. There's a couple others, but there are very few limitations on what volunteers will be able to do. Our volunteers will essentially be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now, we can't guarantee, we won't be able to guarantee that we can find a volunteer to fill a service request. If somebody says, I'd like somebody to take me to the airport at 3 in the morning, that might be a little bit tough, so we can't guarantee it. But even with that kind of a request, we're finding ways, villages are finding a way around that by paying a Lyft or Uber out of their budgets. And then the third way that UpRiver Village will be unique is that the volunteers are all friends and neighbors. It's not somebody driving across town from Tualatin or wherever, a stranger. You really get to know the volunteers that are coming to your house, that are taking you to the doctor, or helping you install a new printer, whatever. I mean, it really becomes a group of people who really know and support one another. So as I said, we're in the development stage, and right now we're recruiting for 3 key volunteer positions. We need a steering council secretary, we need a communications coordinator, and we need an outreach coordinator. And then we also need additional volunteers to help with smaller pieces of our marketing plan. We are also collecting names for our mailing list. These would be anybody who wants to volunteer now with organizational development, people who would like to just stay informed of our progress. It'll probably be maybe a year before we open our doors for business and start serving seniors. And then also collecting names of people who would like to become a member and receive services in the future, or who would like to volunteer in the future to provide that direct service to seniors. So I can answer your questions. Any questions?
Yeah, Councilor White.
Do you partner with, like Visiting Angels or other groups that are doing similar work?
I will be marketing to them. I'm actually, they're on my list of agencies or organizations to contact, because that would be a really great partnership, because we complement one another. They provide what we don't and vice versa, so
It sounds like a
they certainly
great
should know
program.
about us.
I had a friend he lived in Portland, and he had to have open heart surgery, and he was a single person, and when he was recovering in the hospital, his house got ransacked, and they pretty much looted the contents
Yeah.
of the place, so another aspect to think about.
And I see many of you are not old enough to need services yet, to be a member. Our members will be 55 and older in those 4 cities that I mentioned. But please think about maybe elderly parents or siblings or neighbors who might need our services. And what I would really like to ask of you tonight is to help spread the word.
Yeah. Counselor Glantz.
Yep, isn't there a membership fee involved?
There is, yes, and we will have 3 levels of membership. We'll have a social membership that it does not include any service requests. We felt strongly that we wanted to have that level of membership because there will be a gap between UpRiver Village and Eastside Village. So Eastside Village territory ends at 122nd. Of course, we will start at the Gresham city limit, so that leaves a gap. That means that like people at, I think it's called Summer Place, and other senior communities and seniors that are in that gap area will still be able to attend social activities. They won't be eligible to receive services simply because it gets difficult to ask volunteers to drive a long distance. Then we will have a regular membership that includes the social activities plus 12 services a year. And then we will have a premium membership that involves 12 services a month. And you know, we do get asked, gosh, you're an all-volunteer agency or organization, you know, why do you charge membership fees? Well, as you all know, it takes money to run an organization. We have background checks, we have insurance, we have printing, we pay for member-wide events, so like picnic that everybody is invited to in the summer, or holiday party, we would pay for those events. So website costs, database costs. So those fees are used to run the organization.
And do you have a target for how many seniors you hope to have signed up?
They used to have a target that they've kind of eliminated, and we get a lot of mentoring from what's called a New Village Mentor Group. These are people who have started the other villages, like Eastside Village is the oldest one in our area. To open for business, we're hoping to have a minimum of 25 members and 25 volunteers, including 5 drivers. Now, what the New Village Mentor Group has set as a goal for villages is to have 100 households included to be able to pay for an office staff person. Right now, of those 13 existing and developing villages, only 2 really have any kind of paid staff. The rest are all volunteer.
Thank you.
Councilor Wittrin.
Just what kind of timeline do you think you're gonna be to get this up and going?
We've been working on it since March. I'm thinking probably another year.
Okay.
But please contact us if you want to get emails and reports on our progress. Might be sooner, might be later. Hopefully it's sooner.
Yeah, any other comments or questions?
Anything else? Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you, Ms. Foreman. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to agenda item number 6, presentation from Portland General Election regarding rate briefing. I'm not going to pronounce your last name, Larry. Beckadal. That's what I was going to say. I should have pronounced your last name. Gosh dang it. Senior VP of Strategy and Advanced Engineer Delivery. Go ahead and take it.
I'll even invite Rihanna to join me up here as well. She usually kicks me under the table. So Mayor Lauer, thank you very much, council members and city manager, Mr. Young. Thank you for having us and for the invite on thus far the hottest day yet this summer. And we didn't quite hit the peak today as far as our all-time load, but we were just shy of that by about 60 megawatts. I think it's about 4,400 megawatts here today for the greater Portland area. And our peak last year was 4,500 megawatts, so close, but not quite there. This is 4 summers in a row. It started with the 2021. We had the heat dome, 116 degrees, as we all fondly remember. Couldn't believe it was Portland area that would be in that kind of heat. But we've had 4 summers now in a row where we've been exceeding 100 degrees, and this trend tends to cause us all to think differently and wonder. These actions are 1 in 20 year, so they're no longer 1 in 20 year when you have 4 in a row, I think. I'm not an analyst per se, but I would guess that it's changed. So thank you for the invite. I want to talk a little bit about and cover or rate review the case that was last year, as well as going forward into this year, was the main context, but I want to be open to answer questions kind of across the board. We'll cover quite a few things here, try to keep it short and informative as we can. Obviously, we've been in the area and operating for 130 years. Started on the Willamette River, goes way back to 1889, when in fact the first DC long-distance transmission line from Willamette Falls to downtown Portland was built. It was then changed to AC shortly thereafter, single phase, and then went 3-phase. That was the first long-distance 3-phase AC in the nation. And so we kind of pride ourselves a little bit on innovation and how this company began. We continue to do so. We proudly serve the greater Willamette Valley here and all parts. And you being the gateway to the greatest, the Columbia River Gorge, doesn't get much better. So we enjoy coming up and visiting. My background, just so you're aware, started with Pacific Corps, kind of all over the Northwest. Went and left them, went to Clark Public Utilities, which is in Vancouver. Was their director of engineering there. Then went to Bonneville, ran the transmission system at Bonneville before joining Portland General 10 years ago. And so I've kind of seen all flavors of utilities, how we operate. Good news is the physics is the same, the electrons are the same. How we're generating them is different today. A lot of renewables, be it wind, be it solar. We've had the hydro system here. We've been very fortunate for many years. And something that has gone on with what was if you remember, the New Deal in the last century, building the hydro dams. Shortly thereafter, World War II, with the aluminum industry coming in, and this area heavily impacted by it. It created the transmission grid that has served us since the 60s and 70s. It was kind of the last of the build-outs. The aluminum industry went away in about the 90s, and our friends in the chip manufacturing started coming into the area. We in this greater area produce 15% of all the chips in the nation. That's also why it's a national security issue at this point. And Intel, if you notice, the $36 billion investment from the federal government into Intel's R&D out in the Hillsborough area happening. So change is afoot, and you've seen it here as far as growth and even the chip manufacturing here. We pride in seeing that happen. But the main thing that if we can on the sides, we'll flip here. We do think about reliability. We do think about affordability, and how do we keep those things going as the economy changes, as the energy systems change. How do we make it clean and reliable and affordable? Those are the issues that we keep driving to. And so on the next slide gives you a little bit of the price history. And I think this was kind of the main concern. Pretty flat from the 2014 timeframe to 2019. And then we hit COVID. We didn't do rate increases during that COVID period, 2021, 2022. Inflation was climbing. The power costs were growing at that time. And so in 2023, we had our first rate increase followed by 2024 in combination there. And you can see the uptick on the curves there, and that shows the residential, the commercial, and the industrial customers, the rates during this period of time. And so as we experience that, the overall power cost, which has been hydro-driven in many parts of the Northwest. We've been very, very fortunate. But as noted on the slide, the Mid-Columbia region, the energy costs have gone up significantly as the demands on the system have been going up. And so we're feeling that across the Northwest, and we continue to see it. Inflation was probably the other big driver during that period of time. Well, we did in February, we announced that we are seeking another rate review for just over 7%. And I would say that the timing, lots of things that I'll call it the perfect storm. January was when the rate increase went into effect at 18%. We had the January ice storm, as you all recall, and that, again, lots of customers out. You're at the coldest period, and you've got a rate increase. That hits bills hard, and we had a lot of customers calling. It was also a crossover between part of your bill being in December, part of your bill being in January, so you're seeing multiple line items on bills that were really, really confusing. So, lesson learned, don't do January rate increases. Try to move that away from because of that confusion, but also it's when the highest bills tend to happen is in the winter time when people are heating, and so lesson learned. But February we did announce, and I think there's been a lot of questions about, okay, what's a process? Who regulates this? Who oversees it? How does the process take place? And so this depicts when we do file a rate review with the Oregon Public Utility Commission. Those 3 commissioners are appointed by the governor, and they reside over the commission staff. We then go into informational hearings with the customers and consumer advocates. And in fact, it's a 10-month process. There's at least typically 5 rounds of testimony and hearings and feedback. There's been open public meetings already that the commissioners have held on this particular 7% request. And they analyze it inside and out and ask all kinds of questions and really hard, really good questions, as I would put it. And in this particular filing, if we go to the next slide, Dave, thank you. 75% of it is for capital, which is new installation, as I think you're all aware, just like the city in terms of sewer lines or water lines or equipment or street repair, etc. For us, we'll talk a little bit about battery installations because there is one here in Troutdale that is going to be taking place. But there is a total of 3 sites, and so that's a big piece of this particular increase. But aging assets that we've incurred, and 75%, like you say, of this is all associated with new capital that's taking place. The other, inflation and power energy cost. Again, if we're having to buy on the market, I'll just say that we tend to purchase about 20% of our power currently on the market. And when Trojan was shut down, the nuclear facility, we started buying on the market and have been ever since. I'll just say that the liquidity or the availability of energy on the market is getting thinner and thinner, and so prices go up further and further. And so we've been at a steady pace putting in. Clearwater is our latest resource, a wind farm out in eastern Montana. It's replacing eventually a coal strip out there, a coal-fired plant that's in eastern Montana. But Clearwater has been doing really well. And at times when the gorge, the projects that we own in the gorge aren't operating, it tends to be operating. And so it's nice to have that diversity across the West. And so we've also entered into an energy imbalance market. It's operated out of Folsom, California. It's called the California Independent System Operator Energy Imbalance Market. We join that because you can then access resources across the West. So the Western Electric Coordinating System goes from Mexico all the way up into Canada, British Columbia, and Alberta, and we rely on each other. And so electricity traveling at 186,000 miles a second can cover that pretty quickly. But we, in fact, do rely heavily. Right now, we're seeing flows that are different. California had great snowpack this past winter. It's their second winter in a row. They have a lot of solar that they've added. And so we're now seeing south to north flows. So in our January storm or January cold period, we were seeing flows coming in to the region. Canada, on the other hand, poor water, poor snowpack. And so not as much energy available. And so we're seeing prices that were higher here in the Northwest at like $150 a megawatt hour versus California at $20, $30 a megawatt hour. So people are trying to buy as much to bring up to the north. So again, a real change in how the energy is flowing across the West. But I bring that to bear is that you know, these impacts, you know, do come as we drive towards cleaner, thinking about energy. Where can we get it from? How do we keep the cost down as much as possible? And so all of those factors, you know, come into play. On the next slide, you know, we really also, through this last rate review, we looked hard at our customers, say how do we and should we, and thinking about assistance for seniors, for instance, who are in fixed income, those that are low income, is there energy assistance type programs? And so income qualified bill discount program was developed with community coalitions and brought to light. It's being used in quite a few of the communities across the Northwest, but it is a new program for us, and it provides for those that are below poverty on the income. I think the next slide shows kind of the participation level. So roughly about 10% of our customers, so the residential customers, I should say, we have roughly 850,000 residential customers. So roughly 10% participate. You know, that you can see that about I think about 2% are represented there in the green that are in a 40 to 60% reduction on their bill that participate in that. So that's 1 to 2% of our customers. And then you see those that are above that are in the 15, 20, and 25% range that is a reduction on their bill. So that's been a real positive impact for those, again, on fixed or low income for our customers across all of the area. Finally, I want to touch on public safety power shutoffs. As you're aware, with wildfire and the risk associated with that, having to determine when it's safest to shut off the power. And the Labor Day fire of 2020 is really what changed my opinion. And we were on duty that evening and having to make that call and to shut the power off on Mount Hood. And as a utility person, that's not normal. I mean, that's against all that you've been brought up to. It's get the power on, keep it on, and be reliable. And so to turn the power off during that phase. But really what we've studied, the science behind it, thinking about the fuel, obviously the wind, the humidity, the temperature at the time, leads you to should we or should we not turn off sections of our system. We have 11 zones across the Willamette Valley that we've identified. That's roughly about 25,000 customers, if my memory serves me correctly. And that could be turned off. And when we get into these situations like today, if we had wind, that'd be a real concern. And trees are over 50% of the outages caused by vegetation. And certainly when you have trees blowing into lines or branches even hitting it and falling, if they start a spark and they ignite a fire, you got a real hazard there. So it's a new practice for us that started in 2018, but we've also done a lot of things like putting out cameras now, the AI-driven cameras that detect smoke and then send us the signals and you get the video. I know quite a few fire departments are working and using those same cameras with us. We get temperature, wind, humidity at those sites as well. That's been a really positive impact for us to be able to see and operate the system that way. So wildfire continues to be a real concern, and you've seen it, whether it was Hawaii, Texas, Colorado. There's been lots of concerns. California certainly is where much of it began, and it changes communities, and so I think we're all much more attuned and thinking about how do we protect communities as well. So let me stop there and answer questions, things that you've been thinking about. If you want to talk about the battery out here in Troutdale, I'd love to talk about that. Even things like safety associated with the battery, first responders, that sort of thing. We want to make sure that as a community member, neighbor, folks are informed, know how to respond, etc. Been working with Pacific Northwest National Laboratories in Tri-Cities. They have a great program. They now have the testing location for all grid batteries. So their technology and the way they've been training the first responders is fantastic. If you have any thoughts, need for that sort of thing, since the battery will be here, happy to work. I don't know who all of our community folks have started that process, but I think it's really important to make sure folks know what to do. So like the substation, you don't just go in there with hoses blaring when there's a fire. You want to think first. And so there's a little bit of education that needs to take place. But we're excited about having the battery there, and you just happen to be the closest community to it. So when there's a need, it's great to have it there to backfeed and support reliability here in Troutdale.
Comments and questions? Councilor Richard. Oops, sorry, Councilor Glantz. Go ahead.
So an 18% increase followed by a potential 7% increase. And I'm just thinking about the average citizen out there just trying to speak out loud for everybody or our constituents here. There has to be a better way to prep, plan, prepare, instead of falling behind on these rate increases, but stay in more of a steady, even quote, so that we don't have huge jumps like this, financially impacting people that are going to be in need of, right on the borderline on some of these programs that are out there. Those are the people that I'm really more concerned about. So I would just ask, can we just look farther ahead to have smaller increases over a longer period of time rather than huge jumps like this? Because it impacted a lot of people and it got a lot of people's attention in a negative light. So it hurts some people right at home. So there's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment.
Councilor Glantz.
I'm curious, I thought at one point there was some pushback from the Public Utility Board about concerns as to whether or not I believe there were some lawsuits over power lines causing fires and damages. What's beyond what you're doing with cameras and sensors? Is there any other types of technology or clearing of areas, anything else you can do to help prevent some of that?
No, absolutely. Great question. I'll just say that there's quite a few different things. One, getting away from wood poles in those fire areas. So either you're going with a steel pole or you're considering undergrounding. The wire may be covered with insulation, so tree protection, if you will. Also, the sensors that do pick up both where there's problems on the lines. So if you have any kind of arcing, sparking, it picks those things up. The type of protection and how fast it is, we put things on instantaneous now in those areas. The good news is it turns out, it turns the line off, very, very quickly. But the bad news is you're out of power. It won't reclose. You've seen that, sometimes in outages where you get either flickers or you see your lights go on and off. Usually that's, a tree or whatever gets into the line. If it bounces off, it can re-energize your back up and running again. That's what they called it, a reclosing device. It would re-energize. Unfortunately though, in wildfire areas, you don't want to do that. You want to, take it out, and then you've got to go patrol. So you got longer outages in those areas that are high fire risk. That's the bad news side. The good news is you trip the line out faster. So we do those types of protection. There's also, the science behind doing spectral scans of the vegetation to determine if you've got more mortality in the trees and the vegetation, and try to take those trees out. But we also know with Doug firs, you tend to, if you take some out, now you've exposed others. That can be a bad thing for wind, etc. So we're just in the learning process, I would say, on that behalf, council member. But by the grace of God, I can only say that it's been our neighboring utilities that have had the lawsuits. We haven't had that at this point. But I would just say that because PacifiCorp has the backing of Berkshire Hathaway, that's the only way that they are still in business. They would have been bankrupt. If we would have had the same lawsuits, we'd be bankrupt. So it can be a utility killer on that behalf. But we are trying to seek better ways. How do we, we've been learning from an international wildfire risk mitigation consortium that includes Australian utilities that have been doing some really good practices, as well as California, as well as even down in South America. Well, we're trying to learn from each other as quickly as possible and try to harden the system as we go. But we do know that, unfortunately, one of the most economical means would be immediately turning off to save homes like we did on Mount Hood during that Labor Day wildfire. So we've got to get better at it. It's not cheap to underground everything, as everybody knows. So can't be an immediate solution, but I even asked the question in those high fire risk zones, if there's new going in, new homes, etc., why not put it underground? That if you're going to do it, that's the time you need to start to do it. So great question. I don't have any solid answers, but know that we're studying this one as quick as we can. We've been putting a lot of practices in, and the commission, we are mandated with a wildfire mitigation plan every year, and it's getting better each year.
And then a follow-up question on the battery. The Troutdale battery location, what kind of capacity would that have in terms of if all those batteries are full at, say, noon, and we enter in, 105-degree afternoon where we're using peak electricity, what kind of coverage will those batteries provide?
So the set of batteries here at Troutdale are 200 megawatts for 4 hours. So you could run continuously for 4 hours, or if it's something less, you ran it at half load or something, you could go 8 hours. 200 megawatts, we called for demand response today during the peak and right at 5 p.m. About 120,000 of our customers participate. Sometimes it's a thermostat, sometimes they turn lights off, different ways that people participate, but we took 100 megawatts down on 4,400 megawatts. It's pretty impressive. So I wish I had the number for Troutdale. I don't know. I suspect Troutdale is about something on the order of about 80 megawatts, excluding large industrial. I'm trying to think of some of the large industrial, but you're probably 80 to 100 megawatts. So 200 megawatts keeps you going. If you, let's just say we were at 100 megawatts for 8 hours.
And do you have plans for more battery centers?
We do. We have, there are 2 others inclusive in this, one over in the St. John's area, and then one over at, in the Hillsborough area. And so all total 475 megawatts of batteries with this round. And if I had my druthers, as we think about, with new loads, the transmission I mentioned, we are now at kind of the capacity of some of the transmission. So as new things come on, we're going to have to increase that transmission between ourselves and Bonneville both. But the batteries can help you extend, and if we put it on both sides of a transmission line, it gives us some flexibility with the transmission line. So we're finding good ways. I'm really looking forward to operating. So when we get into the operating periods and how best to operate them, time will tell, but how it will really make a difference on the system.
And just as an aside, I did participate in the program where it controlled my thermostat for a couple of years. Finally turned it off for reasons that weren't related to that. But I've gotten in the habit of, knowing that it's going to be, 4 to 7 o'clock in the evening is a time to try to reduce anything I can.
Well, we appreciate it, and hopefully we're getting a little bit of a kicker when you do, because this is where we look at the flexible load as being a win-win for both. If sometimes during these days, when you have peaks like today, instead of the $20 to $40 a megawatt hour, you're buying on the market at $1,000 a megawatt hour. And so we're happy to share that with customers to flex their load. And so we appreciate everybody that does participate. So if we can get you back on, we'd love to have you.
I just do it anyway. It's okay.
Thank you.
Councilor One.
Probably 2 separate things, but one is, we're talking about, loads, we're talking about buying electricity. So this last year I just got solar, and when I got it, there's multiple different options from multiple different companies. It was a little bit confusing until I really sat down and just kind of learned more about it. And I mainly got it because I have an electric car, which made me realize how much energy they use in terms of my daily usage. But is there any thought to offering more solar to people at some sort of I would say it's going to take a discounted rate or some sort of discounted price or some incentive? For instance, my parents, to operate their house, they would need, something like 10 panels, but their house could hold 25 panels. And so if you could offset, by using their extra energy, let it go to the system in addition to what they have, is there anything that PG is offering or electric companies are doing to incentivize people to put more panels than they would ever need potentially on to help bring back electricity locally into the system that's clean, green energy? If that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And it's a great comment. We're working on a program right now. And what I would say is that, having solar, I don't know if you've heard the term the duck curve, but during the day in California when the solar would come up heavy, usage, you could just see it fall off. But then as soon as evening came, the solar's falling off, you spike up on your energy demand, and it's a killer on the system. It's really hard to manage that. And so what we're seeing in small pockets is that solar happening on our feeders. If I could encourage, in the program that we're trying to look at, is how do we team that up with storage, whether that's storage in the house or storage on the feeder, then that excess sits in, and then you can levelize the evening and not have these big spikes that are happening. And so that's where we want to go. We want to encourage that. there's a lot of value to that solar. I know a lot of people have, and we did it to ourselves in years past. It's like, oh, that's too expensive. We can generate it at large plants for much less. But what we're finding is that the benefits in the system and operating that flexibility in the system is a lot of value. And so we want to encourage that. I'd like to see a lot more solar roof, and I'd like to see storage somehow with that so we can levelize that during the period.
That was my next question, is how do you merge those two together? Is batteries, is that the answer to helping offload the ups and downs of it? Because the reason I did it now is because I wanted to spend much money on it, was energy prices are going up, and if you do it now, then you're gonna be benefited down the road. And so how can we incentivize people to do that to help us down the road? And just off the battery thing real quick, so you said it's a 200 megawatt battery down there, which is large, obviously. Have you figured out how that actually works, like going in the system? Does power come into that, charge it up, and then you guys can discharge it whenever you want to, or?
Yeah.
I was more just curious.
Yeah, no, that is, it's again, you wanna, when there's low cost, be it either hydro or wind or solar that's available, that's the best time, and tends to be evenings, et cetera, when you would be charging. Not during the peak of the day typically, but if you got a lot of solar, maybe it is during the peak of the day. So understanding that, and then what it does to the system when your transmission flows, as I was mentioning, the flows change. How we see that, how that can influence, because we turn generation on and off on the system. In fact, it's driven a lot of times by market price when people turn on and off, and they can then influence, you need more from the north, so let's drive prices down in the north to cause generation to come in, or vice versa. That's how we move the energy around throughout the system. But so those batteries come in really handy, and we're going to learn as we put them in. It is, but it's a great resource. I think it is really going to help us. And again, as we try to go more green on the system, finding those renewable resources, being able to use them.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah, Councilor White.
Yeah, I just, we used to see you guys at the League of Oregon Cities, and Troutdale would attend those events that you guys put on, and they were really nice, and it was a good way to put a face on PGE, and so I was hoping maybe you guys would continue that. But one of the things we always asked for was, if there was ever a city that could benefit from undergrounding power, it's Troutdale, because we are a tree city, USA. We have probably more trees than most cities just because of our location, but we have the high wind, and so it's a bad combination. And this is where the news crews come to film, when there's a winter storm, and to shut someone's power off during that time could actually become dangerous for folks. So I just want to put that bug in your ear. And we were warned, when the renewable green energy stuff started coming up, that there's nothing better than hydroelectric power, and for cost, and it's not listed as a renewable or green, and I think that's part of the problem, because it should be listed. And I don't know if there's anything you can do about that.
There is credit for it now.
There is, okay.
It is transitioned, but there are quite a few. I think you've probably seen stories of removing the dams on the Snake River, et cetera. There's lots of requests that are out there, and we know there's impacts. Hydro does have impacts. We all need to recognize that. How we go into the future, what is the best way, and if you're going to remove, what are you replacing it with? And I guess our only ask is that we figure out what we're going to replace it with before we take it out.
Yeah, and when it's a monopoly product, like power, a 25% increase is going to really hurt a lot of our citizens. don't know if there's anything you can do about that. 18% was a big hit, and I actually heard a lot of complaints about it.
No, I appreciate that comment and the advice of how do you take this over a period of time and not hold back on years and then bring in a big increase all at once. So appreciate the comment. It really is, we recognize there is an impact.
I did have a question on people that are taking advantage of the low-income subsidized power bill. Is that cost being passed on to, is that part of this 25% rate increase?
It does. I mean, it does filter back. I mean, other customers are paying for that.
Okay.
We do at the same time, we try to get as much federal, LEAP funds, those sorts of things, as much as possible, but it's never enough, and so that's why it was recommended. Probably should point out too that when we talk about some of our transmission and some of the projects, we've gotten over about $50 million now in federal grants to help us with some of our work and our in infrastructure. So I'll just say we aggressively went after dollars. A lot of utilities held back, but we said we're going after it. So.
And one final question from me is, I heard, I don't have any facts to back any of this, but I heard from several people that they didn't have power for like 6 days, but PG was trying to bill them as if they were using their normal rate. Is there any truth to that?
No, your meter would be off at that point.
So it's, okay.
Now, if they were sent a bill because that was prior to the event,
Okay.
could be bad timing that the bill arrives at that time, but no, the meter is down.
All right.
Obviously, no energy is being used.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Terrell, we'll get public comment here in just a second, so if you wouldn't mind lowering your hands so that way I can see when counselors raise theirs. Mr. Trumke. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't generally ask questions at these, but without confusing everybody else, I'm a little confused. When you said it has, the battery down here has 200 megawatts for 4 hours, would that be about 800 megawatt hours?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I get it.
Energy math. Good job.
It's, electrical engineering is something I really never quite got.
Or it's just a hobby of yours right now.
Well, I have an electric car, and I was just checking to make sure it reports how much I use in megawatt hours or kilowatt hours.
Any other comments or questions from council?
I just have one last.
Yeah, Councilor White.
I'm wondering if PG could put together a list for the average consumer, the residents, on things they could do to help themselves, to impact, to lessen their power usage and save.
Yeah.
Because you guys are kind of the experts on that.
Yep. We haven't. We do work with the Energy Trust of Oregon.
Okay.
Very closely. We fund them. That's
All right.
yeah. Should
I'm
say we
familiar
all
with
fund them. So that is a direct support, and so we try to work closely with them. Just like the solar question, and where to get solar panels and who best to, et cetera. Trying to work that a little bit differently to help with the confusion. Because when you go on their website and you see 96 different suppliers, you kind of go, where do I start, right? And how do we make that easier for everybody to get to a supplier, get it installed, and have a good experience getting it installed? I know there are some that you have to ask the question, was that a good experience? And you want that feedback coming back that says, there are either ratings on them, et cetera, so.
I do have something.
Yeah,
Bit
Councilor
of,
White.
like feedback. So when I was doing my solar, the one thing that is extremely confusing is your bill. And that's what solar does, and they break it down. But I don't know if my only feedback would be is if there is a way to have your bill breakdown of all the taxes and fees all associated. But then at the end, just say, with all of these fees added up together, each kilowatt hour costs X amount at this time of the day if you do whatever you participate be able to look at that and do their own calculations on how much they're using and at what time of the day. It took me quite a while to like figure that out. Like I said, I got really nerdy into it, like Mr. Trump was just saying with his phone and all the data I look at, and with my solar every day, I look at how much I'm using, and it would just make it a lot easier, I think, for people, and maybe let them change their mind about when they're using energy and when not, and let have citizens could make better choices on what they're doing at what time of the day. For instance, I will run my dryer in the morning, and I will not run it right now. So that's just feedback. So
And there are certain rate selections, time of use, et cetera, that you can join, and again, if you're not on that rate, you're not getting the same special. So so good call out, and we've even heard from the Citizens Utility Board, which represents the customer advocacy, and they really pushed hard for some of the information that is on the bill through legislation. And now they're rethinking that. There's just a lot of stuff that, it's kind of like the fine print. You really want to know all of that. You'd like to dig into it if you can, if you want to, but I want to know the bottom line here and when it cost me this. Put it in simple terms.
my basic thing is like I was under the understanding my rate was like 8 cents per kilowatt hour in the beginning. Well, in actuality, it was more like 13 cents because of all the taxes get added on, and so I'm just now more able to make better choices when I'm using my energy or when I decide to do things or not. So it just might be something nice for people, especially at times like this when you want people to offload energy during peak hours, what that actually means, and sometimes seeing how much that can cost can sway people's decisions. So.
Well, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, let's go ahead and open up public comments, since I already had one raise his hand anyways. Public comments open at this time on agenda item number 6, Portland General Electric rate briefing. If you have public comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and city of residence for the record. Mr. Terrell, go ahead and go.
Hi, this is Woodrow Terrell. I'm a Troutdale resident. And was it Mr. Beckendahl? Did I say that right?
Yes, that's correct. Back it up.
Awesome. A couple questions about the battery energy storage system. Are there any firefighting requirements for the BESS?
Yes, there actually is, and that's why I don't know. Do a little background check now to come back so we can give you some information, but there absolutely is. There's certain things that you don't want to do, like ventilating the battery. If there was smoke coming out, rushing up there and popping the door open, for instance, reduces a lot of oxygen, and in fact, they had a fire like that in Arizona about 5 years ago, and so systems have been put in place with the new to minimize those sorts of thermal runaways on lithium batteries, but that was a real concern at the time. But there are practices that firefighters need to know going into a station that has a battery in it. So absolutely, it's a great question, and like I say, the leadership that we're getting, the science behind it from the Pacific Northwest National Labs in the Tri-Cities is amazing, and so we'd love to avail that to your fire department personnel.
And then I'm going to pause just for 1 second. Mr. Ray Young, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I don't know if Larry was aware, but the fire prevention aspect of this project was very closely watched by the State Fire Marshal's Office and Gresham Fire, because this is actually the first facility in the state that's built like this, and they wanted to make sure they got the fire issues correct in terms of construction. And so we worked really hard, the State Fire Marshal worked really hard to set a pattern so that this would be a safe facility, and it would set the pattern for the other facilities that would be put up around the state also. So that was a very serious concern by everybody when this project was approved.
Okay.
Outstanding. Follow-up question about the actual size of the storage. I heard there was some math about 200, 800. I read somewhere it was 400. And so what actually would the total capacity be? And would Troutdale residents be on the receiving end of any of that, or is that all slated for other locations?
So it is 200 megawatts. That's the rating of the facility. The 400 probably comes from the total 3 sites is 475 megawatts. So 3 sites, maybe that's where the 400 megawatt came from. But 200 megawatts is the size of the battery being installed here. And you know, not to say in the future it wouldn't be something different or adding to it, but that is the size of the battery. So from a Troutdale perspective, it's serving the Troutdale and connected to the Troutdale substation. It avails itself, you know, to be here and available kind of in a local way. So if there was trouble, but again, if it's a tree in the line that caused the outage, it doesn't do any good. But if we see an issue that, you know, it protects a little bit of power quality, so it filters from maybe some things that might happen elsewhere. And at the same time, it will retain voltage here in the Troutdale area. So it's great to have it here, but I can't guarantee that every neighborhood is going to be protected, because if the problem's in that neighborhood, that's where it starts from.
Excellent. I do appreciate your time coming to speak to everybody. It's been very informative, and thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Anybody else on Zoom wishes to make comment, now's the time to go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Mayor Lauer, Adrian Kester, Troutdale.
Kester, go ahead.
One quick question is, has there been any efforts looking at like community solar projects? Because I know that me personally, for our family, I would love to install some rooftop solar. Unfortunately, I live on the north side of a hill and am surrounded by 85-year-old trees. So that's sort of a non-option for me, but I would love to partake in something if there were, or even possibly even contribute to it, if there was some sort of community solar engagement or option for the locality that we live in, or any other community renewable for that matter.
So yes, Mr. Kester, thanks. Good question. It has been, there have been community solar projects put together, and I'd have to go dig back now to see what's available, and if Troutdale as a community was interested, you know, where, the location, those things all come into play. But yes, there have been in the past, and we've had participation. It's usually been done by the community in establishing that. So, but would encourage it. I think those are projects that can, again, if with land availability, those sorts of things, if there's an interest there, yeah, we'd love to talk about it.
Okay, great. Anybody else on Zoom? All right, not seeing anybody. Anybody in council chambers? All right, I'm going to close public comment. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, thank you. We appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
It was very
invitation.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 7, a resolution to adopt the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan. Erica Palmer, welcome to the desk.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Erica Palmer, Community Development Director. Tonight before you, you have the 2023 Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. This plan is an update to the 2017 plan, which the city had adopted. This plan is updated every 4 years. So the next planning cycle for this plan to be updated is in 2026, and it'll come back to council for potential adoption in 2027. The purpose of this plan is to really identify and reduce risks of natural hazards in the community. And when we talk about natural hazards in the community, we've identified those such as severe weather. We have ice storms, we have windstorms, we've had heat domes. Other natural hazards include landslides, the potential possibility for large earthquake. We have the volcano. Oftentimes I forget that we sit at the edge of a volcano in the region. And then, of course, in the past couple of years, we've seen a lot more wildfires in the state of Oregon. In 2017, we had the Gorge Fire. In 2020, we had the fire in St. Sam in the Estacada areas. And along with the wildfires, we are seeing the potential risk for wildfire smoke and what that can do to communities as well. So I have identified these natural hazards, and we go through a process to identify any mitigation strategies for the community to prevent any losses to life, property, or community economic damage. We identify, vulnerable populations within the community, and really strategize our mitigation projects around vulnerable populations and critical infrastructure. I want to say one of the main benefits of adopting this plan is this plan gives the city extra support when we go out and when we look for funding and for grants to fund these projects. Just recently, the city received a $60,000 fire marshal grant from the state of Oregon to look at mitigation risks around wildfire. And we just did a program in the Sandy Palisades neighborhood last month that was very successful. And so we got the $60,000 grant, and we will be continuing to do these projects for the next 3 years. So with that, if you have any questions about this plan or the planning process, and I just want to mention, because I wasn't here through this planning process, I did reach out to Multnomah County, and I wanted to ask about their public engagement strategy and what they did. And a community survey did go out to Troutdale citizens, and they actually got a pretty good response rate to that survey. So there was community engagement.
All right, any comments or questions from council? Just really quick though, I guess I have one. Just reading through the staff report and the document, basically this allows us to go out and seek federal dollars with regards to grant funding for projects that we have for any hazard mitigation we might want to do in Troutdale. And if we don't adopt this, does that stop that option? Does it?
No, we can still go.
hamstring us?
We can still go after those grant opportunities. This just really bolsters, the support of the community going after those grants.
Okay, great. Councilor Glantz.
I have two basic questions. The first one, and I don't see any page numbers, it's the last page of chapter 1-introduction, where it talks about the goals identified to reach that vision. And we're talking about, going after funds. In reading through this, it almost sounds like we're agreeing to participate as a regional group rather than necessarily saying we just want it for Troutdale. Would we be in situations where, Multnomah County says, nope, we're going after this, $1 million grant and we'll give some of it to you, but you just need to endorse it? How does the interplay between the different cities play out?
Mm-hmm. So this plan it has a section for the city of Troutdale, the city of Fairview, the city of Gresham, and the Port of Portland was involved in this planning process recently. So each agency has a different section. But when we talk about risk, and grants that are out there for these mitigation projects, we can certainly collaborate with the different cities that are out there and with the county. So if the county goes after a grant, and let's say that they want to, portion it out and divvy it up between the cities, that's a possibility. Or we can go out for a grant just for the city of Troutdale.
So there isn't any implied who gets, who goes after which grant?
Nope.
And then my second question is, I was surprised that wildfire risk wasn't higher. Having been through that 2017 gorge fire, I mean, if the winds had just shifted slightly, our city might even look different. It was pretty scary how close that came. Why was it not?
And that's the conversation through this next update that we can definitely touch on is, looking at that risk and associating it at a higher level.
I don't understand.
So through the next,
with how it is, how often is this redone?
it's done. So we update this plan every 4 years. And the next update starts in 2026.
So for the next 4 years, wildfire is going to have a lower risk rating.
For the next, 2 years, 2 to 3 years. But we did receive a wildfire grant from the Oregon State Fire Marshal for mitigation risks.
Okay. I'm still not understanding why it came in lower than some of the other ones. I would consider our city better prepared for wind because of our planning. We've gone in there, we've gotten exemptions, and I think you referred to that in this document about where, we require double wall construction. We require that, roofs are tied down. Because I remember back in the 70s when some of Sandy Palisades roofs were blowing off in a windstorm. And we have learned from that. So I would consider wildfire to have a much more potential for damage than an east windstorm. So who determined what the ratings were? Was it just plugged in and machine learning came back with, okay, based on these factors, this is what it is? Is there no input from the city?
So there was input from the city. So planning staff was involved in this update when it was updated last year or in 2022 and in 2023, and the county was also involved.
But it wasn't presented to planning commission or to council at any point.
It was not.
Yeah, I think can I add here that the county puts in a lot of expertise and resources in determining this information. And I probably get myself in trouble for suggesting it's probably not something the planning commission has the expertise to look at or even consider. We get the benefit of the county helping, we throw in where we can. I'm sure we could get you the answer as to where the county came up with their fire level damages, if the council would like.
Yeah, I'd be curious, thank you.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
think that would be good. I mean, especially through this, looking through the mitigation action section, and it rates and priority scores based on the hazard, and volcano is rated higher than wildfire. And I get it, we live on the rim of an active volcano, but at the same time, I feel like wildfires. Is it? Oh, I read that wrong. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if you look at
I see it now.
item 535.
Yeah, I see it now. Okay. There we go. Where'd it go?
I think part of it is when you look at the towns in California that were destroyed by the fire a couple of years ago caused by the power company down there, those were towns that were surrounded by forest, very deep, large forests. And I think the difference is when you get into an urban area where they're not surrounded by deep, dark forests like that, it does reduce the risk of the fire itself causing a problem. That's probably why it's moderate. But the smoke, of course, is high because we were really smoky in 2017. But I think that's how they differentiate between high and moderate, is the high would be something like those cities in Northern California that were essentially parked in the middle of a national forest and surrounded by big, dry trees.
Gotcha. I literally just realized that this list is alphabetical.
The rating is, it's not a numbered page, but it's chapter
5.3.5.
5.3.5 has the rating.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions from council? Councilor White?
Yeah. Hi, Erica, is there any new regulations within this document?
No, so this isn't a regulatory document.
Okay.
If you adopt it. It doesn't make any changes to the development code or the municipal code. It's really just a guiding document.
I noticed Portland is not gonna adopt it. Do you have any information why that is?
Yes, so the city of Portland, they actually have their own hazard mitigation plan. They're the only city in Multnomah County that goes through that process.
You're self-insured.
Is there any benefits, maybe looking at what they're doing, or is it maybe possibly more restrictive?
I wasn't here through this planning process, but I'm gonna take a bet that through this planning process, they did take a look to see what Portland was doing.
Their process, I can speak to. Where they got to, I can't. They, over a period of about 5 years, changed their earthquake hazard requirements for existing buildings. And the building that I was working with was a post and beam construction, which was, I think, 5 or 6 stories tall, which is very resilient, but had a masonry curtain wall on the outside. It was 100 years old, and it flipped every time they looked at it, which was 3 or 4 times, they changed the rating of the building and its insurability. It maybe wasn't insurable, maybe was insurable, went back and forth and back and forth. So I don't think they really understood all of the ramifications of their aspirations when they were rewriting their codes. So, and maybe they've learned more since then, because that was about 3 years ago. But over that 5-year period, it was very frustrating to try to even keep up with what they were doing with their earthquake resiliency code.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Wynn?
What is the benefit to the city of adopting this and or not adopting this?
So the biggest benefit to adopting this, it really just gives greater support going after any sort of funds that are out there at the state level or at the federal level. Because oftentimes grant applications, they will ask, has this project been documented in a plan? This is something that the community supports.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Let's open it up to public comment. Resolution to adopt the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdiction Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan. Anybody on Zoom wishes to make public comment, now's the time. Go ahead and unmute yourself and state your name and city of residence for the record. Mr. Terrell.
Hi, this is Woodrow Terrell, live in the city of Troutdale. Miss, I apologize, I don't have your name in front of me again. What was your name?
Erica Palmer.
Miss Palmer, sorry about that, I apologize. So the mitigation plan is the response to a THIRA, the Threat Hazard and Incident Response, right?
Can you repeat that question?
This mitigation plan is the response to the county Threat Hazard Incident Response Plan. Is that correct?
So it's the response to natural hazards that the community could face. So we're looking at all the different sort of natural hazards that could occur within Troutdale.
Understood. And so, and those were identified in the county emergency management document called the THIRA, the Threat Hazard Incident Response Plan, right?
Correct.
When was that last updated?
That is that is an excellent question, and I don't know.
Okay, it seems like the plan would need to be updated and agreed to if the THIRA had been updated and agreed to. And I just can't find where the THIRA is. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from Zoom? Now is your chance. Unmute yourself and state your name and city of residence for the record. All right, not seeing anybody. Council chambers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Any other comments or questions before we entertain adoption? Okay.
Make a motion to adopt resolution to adopt the Multnomah County Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan. I'll second that.
All right.
Okay. Counselor Wynn,
Yes.
Mayor Lauer,
Yes.
Counselor White,
Yes.
Counselor Wittrin,
Yes.
Counselor Glantz,
Abstain.
Counselor Ripma,
Yes.
Counselor Caswell.
Yes.
All right, passes. Thank you, Erica, appreciate it. Let's move on to agenda item number 8, staff communications, Mr. Ray Young.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'm happy to report that this will be our last meeting until August 27th, which will be the fourth Tuesday in August. Number 2, that is the same date. All of current or hopeful politicians to file.
Or fire.
We were talking
Or
about
fire.
fire. I got stuck. File, F-I-L-E, for positions on city council or mayor. That is due on August 27th by 5 p.m. If you have anybody in the audience, anybody on Zoom, or anybody here have questions, contact Sarah. She has all the information for you if you want to run for office. Number 3, Movies in the Park will begin later this month on July 26th on Friday evening. And I think we're doing the Barbie movie on that night. I think
Way
so.
to be trendy.
Yes. Anyway, excited about that. Yeah, wear pink. Our next, our next First Friday is August 2nd. We did cancel last week's First Friday because of the heat, and a vast majority of the vendors said, yes, please cancel it. It was too hot for many of them and they weren't gonna wanna come anyway. So I think it was a smart call to cancel last Fridays, but we'll be doing it again on August 2nd. Number 4, we're gonna start paving in the neighborhoods soon. Our normal paving schedule has gone out to all the residents. Anybody affected will have gotten a letter. So notices have gone out to the citizens. Number 5, and just an update for some of you, the tap house right next to us that is almost done should be getting a temporary occupancy by the end of this week. I'm looking over at Erica to make sure it should be by the end of this week, so they may be doing a soft opening really soon. And my understanding that the other establishment in town that's new, the City Hall, Away Days Brewery, they're finally moving forward with lots of work. The beer vats, whatever they're called, to brew beer in, they all showed up. They're stacked behind the building. And the plumber is there this week to do all the in-ground lines and everything that's needed to make beer in that location. So we're finally seeing some significant movement at City Hall, which is really nice to see. So anyway, that is all I have for you.
Awesome. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, council communications. I'm going to start, please and thank you. So I have some words prepared. As we approach our council summer break and the filing deadline for elections here in Multnomah County, I wanted to take a moment to inform you all of my intentions moving forward. After careful consideration and seeking the counsel of my amazing, wonderful, supportive, beautiful, fantastic wife, Chauncey, I have decided not to seek a 3rd term on council or a 2nd term as your mayor. These past 7.5 years have been an absolute pleasure, but the time has come to step aside and allow someone else to lead this city and work alongside the next great city council for Troutdale. But all that to say, you're not getting rid of me quite yet because we still have a few months to go. And so we still have some work to do, like getting the next council set up and prepared for the next 4 years, for all the citizens here in Troutdale, not just the ones that sit up here at this desk. And in saying that, I wanted to close by saying I appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to the good work that we get to continue to do for the next 5 months. So, thank you very much. Councilor Wittrin.
I appreciate this council very much, and I'm looking forward to the summer break. Enjoy some sunshine, but this is always a great time. I enjoy our interaction here, so yeah. Thank you.
Councilor White.
Yeah, I'm actually sorry to hear that, because I enjoyed working with you, and I thought you did a good job, especially as our mayor. So you will be missed.
I appreciate that.
Hopefully, maybe you'll go for a higher office.
That ship has sailed. But I appreciate that.
This next one, I really hate even bringing it up, but I talked to Ray about it, and I think there's some confusion on the dog situation in Glen Auto Park, because I thought it was pretty clear that we weren't gonna allow dogs at all in Glen Auto Park. And I brought it up because I saw the signs weren't up yet, and we're getting into full swing of summer. So I think we need some clarification. I know it wasn't in the Champion, it listed the parks that were gonna allow dogs, but Glen Auto Park was not on there. And I know the Parks Committee recommendation was to not allow dogs, and they brought up the Sugar Pine aspect. And the conclusion was that is, even though they rent that property, is still considered the park. And my final point is that dogs are allowed in Lewis and Clark Park and on the other side of the river. So I think that's a fair compromise. I know we're going on a long break, but I don't know if anybody else remembers that or if I'm missing something.
I recall it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was clear.
Yeah.
So that was the only part.
Right.
Yeah, and I know the vote was, I think unanimous except for Councilor Juan, so maybe we can get that corrected before summer in full swing.
I think that's something Ray can work on while we're all sitting in our kiddie pool with our toes in the water. I don't actually have a kiddie pool. I don't have
Sure.
kids.
I don't get a summer break.
That's all I have.
Councilor Glantz.
Yep, thank you, Randy, for your service. You have been a great mayor and you do a great job running meetings. You are far more patient than I could ever be. Thanks to council, I also will not be seeking re-election. If there's anybody out there that wants any tips or anything like that, I am happy to share, and I would love to see a lot of folks run. And then I also want to thank Ray, or whoever did this, but the water bill, you can now actually see the comments. They're bold and they're big and they're not like faded out. Great job.
Good, I'll make sure Finance Department is aware of your joy over that. Yeah, before it was pretty bad, it was like worthless.
Well, I'll be the first to say, Councilor Glantz, that I've appreciated having you on council these past few years. And I wish times were different and we could sit next to each other or close in the same room, because I still think, and I know we haven't met in person, but I still think you're going to walk in and you're like 6'7" and you're going to put Councilor Rittman to shame. But I appreciate the time and I appreciate your opinions and the way you've spoken up throughout your years here with us. And I know it didn't just start here on council. I know that there's many years that you've devoted to the city, and I appreciate it. Councilor Caswell.
Yeah, nothing for me, thanks.
Councilor One.
I was going to say nothing, but I do.
You don't have to say anything.
I'm going to say something. I think there's few times in people's lives where they encounter a leader who can lead positively and encourage and make everybody around them better. And so I feel like
You've yet to do that, is what you're going to say.
You have done that for this city and for us, myself specifically on this council. And so I appreciated you and your helpfulness in moving me forward and helping to understand what my role is within the city. So I appreciate that, and we will miss you. I think that everybody, stories of how this council has gone in the past, and I think that we all respect and work well together. And I think that one of the best things about this is that while we all don't agree on everything, and that's good, our city's well represented, but we respect and listen to each other, and that's a really important thing. So I think we should all be proud of ourselves for doing that and representing our city. So thanks for your service.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
That's it.
Council President Remy?
Yes, well, I also really appreciate how you served as mayor, Randy, and when you were on the council before. And to my fellow councilors, I mean, I've been on many different councils, but this has been really the best. I mean, we don't always agree, it's true, and I wish we did, but you know, Troutdale is American democracy in action, it really is. And we should be proud of that. Sandy, I'm sorry you're not gonna run again. I've totally enjoyed serving with you. I also wanted to mention to the council that PGE, the reason I didn't ask any questions, I'm an electrical engineer. I understood everything you said. And I was appointed by Governor Kitzhaber to the Energy Facility Siting Council, which, and I served for 9 years, and that does transmission lines and power plants. And I understand, not battery storage, that's a new thing, but honestly, but I did think that this council, and we also can't do anything about the rates. We, Troutdale, can't do anything. So I was wondering, what's the rate briefing? What's that gonna be? But it turned out to be really useful because of the way the council gave them useful feedback on the rate increases that they've put through. Those have to go through the Public Utility Commission. They're not just automatic, but I thought excellent points were made. So anyway, I was not going to run against you, Randy, if you were going to run. And you and I briefly talked about this, and I hadn't really planned some sort of announcement, but if you aren't going to run, I will be running for mayor. And I'll end with that. And am I last? I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, everybody, have a good night. Thank you very much, I appreciate you.